Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Marissa and I am the creator, the maker, the knitter, the crocheter. I am her behind Missouri Makes, and today I'm going to show you how to knit a sock tube. Today I am going to be using DK weight yarn with a number 2 knitting needle, and I will be doing this magic loop style. This technique will work with 9-inch circulars or DPNs, whichever you choose to use for your socks, whatever is comfortable for you. And I will say that the DK weight is the same method for fingering weight yarn or any other type of yarn. The only difference will be your stitch count. So that is what you will have to take into consideration. Now, when you read DK weight patterns for socks, some use number 3, some use whatever. I use a number 2 because I like the gauge that I get, and it fits my feet and my husband's feet perfectly fine. Now, what we're going to be doing is I'm going to show you how to work from the bottom of your sock up, because I personally do not like doing top down or cuff down socks. They are not comfortable for me, and when I do magic loop I get ladders, and I personally never thought that I would be a magic loop knitter for socks because I always get ladders. So I got 9-inch circulars or 8-inch circulars, I don't know what they are, and to work my sock, and those aren't comfortable for me either. So when I learned how to knit from the toe up, these became my favorite method for knitting socks, and I do it magic loop style. Like I said, you can use 9-inch circulars, you can use DPNs, you can use Addy Flexi Flips, whatever it is that you prefer to knit socks on, you can use that. Now, this is my own hand-dyed yarn, and it is a rainbow yarn. And whenever I did this, I only had a partial skein to make this sock, and this is what I have left over. So what I'm going to do is make this a pair of scrappy socks. And so I'm going to finish off my little ball of yarn, and then I've got another rainbow yarn that I dyed, except this one has black in it. So it will look different than this sock, but my husband doesn't care. My husband loves homemade knitted socks, whatever you want to call them. He loves them. He calls them his ugly socks. He doesn't say it in a bad way. He says it in a good way. He likes ugly socks. So, because he's used to wearing white or black socks, so anything with color to him is ugly socks. He doesn't mean it in a bad way. But he is ready for a new pair of socks, and so I thought I would show you how to do this. Now, I personally found that I don't have to work in a heel for my socks. I can make a tube sock, and it fits mine and my husband's feet just fine. I don't need a heel. So in this video, all I'm going to be showing you how to do is work from the toe all the way up to the cuff here, and that is what is going to be in this video. But I do have a sock. Before I figured out that I can just knit a tube, I made me a pair of socks that, well, there's only one, it's not a pair yet, that I added scrap yarn so that I could have a heel. And whenever I take that scrap yarn out and do the heel, I will show you how to make a heel, an afterthought heel, in your tube socks. And so in this video there will be no heel tutorial. In later video you will have a heel tutorial that you can implement into your tube socks. And so I do encourage trying out just tube socks and seeing how they fit on your feet. Depending on your arch and how you like your socks will depend if a tube sock fits your feet just fine. For my family, for me and my husband, I haven't tried it on my daughter yet, but for me and my husband, tube socks without the heel is perfectly fine for our feet. So I encourage you to try it. If it doesn't work for you, then just stay tuned and I will show you how to put in an afterthought heel for your tube socks. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so to start, I have my number 2 which is, let me find the numbers on here. And number 2 is a 2.75 needle. And I'm going to be doing magic loop like I said. What I'm going to start with is I'm going to take my yarn, and to determine the length that I need, I will be taking and pinching the end and going up until I get to the bend of my arm, which would be my elbow, and then half of my arm width, so I have enough yarn. And I mean, it doesn't look like it would be enough, but it is. So what I'm going to do, you can take and either loop it over, or you can make a slip knot. I prefer slip knot just so that it makes me feel like it's more secure. So I'm going to create a slip knot. If you notice, we have a top needle and a bottom needle, and the loop is on our top needle, which is the needle away from us. Now, if you notice, we want our tail to be towards us, which is the bottom, and our working yarn in front or on top, which is away from us. We are going to start with Judy's Magic Cast On, and if you have never done Judy's Magic Cast On, we are going to do it here so you can learn it. Or if you would prefer a tutorial that is dedicated to just Judy's Magic Cast On, there are many videos. So, okay, so I have my top loop and my bottom loop. I'm going to take my yarn, and I'm going to hold it the slingshot method. If you look, I'm going to hold it the slingshot method. And what you need to remember when it comes to Judy's Magic Cast On is opposites attract. So I have a loop on my top needle, and I need a loop on my bottom needle. So the way I'm going to get a loop on my bottom needle is to take the top yarn, which is my working yarn. I'm going to take my 2 needles and swivel them forward over this top yarn, and take my yarn and go over the bottom needle and between them and slide it up there and get it snug. Okay, so I want a loop on my top needle now. So what I'm going to do, opposites attract, so I'm going to take my 2 needles and I'm going to swivel down and bring this working yarn over, just like that, and it's going to go between the needles. And now I have 2 loops on my top needle, and I have 1 loop on my bottom needle. Okay, so I need a loop on my bottom needle, so opposites attract. I'm going to swivel my needles forward and take that top yarn and put it between my needles. I need a loop on my top needle, so I'll swivel the yarn down and over and between those needles. Let's do it one more time. Just like that. Okay, so let's talk more about my stitch count. So if you have made DK weight socks before, you know that a normal stitch count is like 56 stitches. For a fingering weight, we do 60, 62, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on the sock fit that you want. For my husband, for a DK weight sock, I do 56 stitches for my husband. And so that is what I'm going to do. And so I have to take into consideration whenever I knit my socks, toe up, you don't want your toe to be the same width as the rest of your sock. Your sock is going to start here where it's smaller. So what I'm going to do, 56 stitches, when you take and divide that up, you need to, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be increasing 4 stitches. Okay, so I'm going to be increasing by 4 stitches every round. And so half of 56 is 28. And down here at the toe, that's what I start with, is I start with 14 stitches on each needle. So that gives me 28 stitches, and then I can increase by 4 stitches and get my number up to 56 without having to worry about, do I need to increase one more stitch on this side versus the other side. We want everything to be even. So when you go to do your stitch count for your socks and you want to start toe up, that's something you need to think about, is you don't want your toe to be the same width as your foot or your leg of your sock. And so you have to cut your stitches down. So when you take and do 14 stitches on each needle to start your toe, you can divide that up to where you can do 4 increases each time you increase to get to 56 evenly. So that's what I'm going to be doing. So there we go. I am going to continue doing Judy's Magic Cast On until I have 14 stitches on each needle. Well, I am here at the end. I have 14 stitches on each needle, and now we are going to work on the next part, which is keeping all of this in order and without coming apart until we get our first round done. And so I'm holding on to my yarn here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep hold of this yarn, because your stitches will come off if you're not careful. And I'm going to take and flip it upside down like that. And when you look at it this way, you should have your pearl bumps. You should have your pearl bumps facing you, and you've got your working yarn on top, and you've got your tail here on bottom. And I have plenty enough tail to hide. In fact, you know, if you went a little bit shorter, you can do that. It doesn't matter. But I have my working yarn on top and my tail on bottom. In order to keep my stitches from coming off, I'm going to take my tail, which is on bottom, and I'm going to fold it onto, in order to keep my stitches from falling off when I go to do the first round. Because if you tug on your top yarn, which is your working yarn, it is connected to this bottom loop here, which is the first stitch you'll be working whenever you go to make your socks. And so I'm going to take my bottom yarn, which is my tail, and I'm going to fold it over the top, and that is going to lock that stitch into place so that it won't go anywhere while I knit my first round. So that is important when you start your first round of your toe up socks, is make sure that this bottom yarn, which is your tail, goes up. And I usually just hold it in my pinky so it stays nice and tight. And then I'm going to take my top needle and I'm going to work my first row as normal. We're going to knit it all the way across. And once you get that first stitch done, you don't have to worry about that tail anymore. And we are not increasing this round, we are just getting across this round. So I got 14 stitches to knit. Okay, so I finished the first half of my round. Now let's go on to the second half. That's what you got to look at when making magic loop socks, is you have a first half and you have a second half, because half of your stitches are on one needle and half of your stitches are on the other needle. So I got my yarn tangled up here. I'm going to put that to the side and grab my working yarn. Okay, so again, this is just a knit round. I'm going to knit that first loop and lock it into place, and then after that first loop, if you'll notice, my stitches are twisted. So in order to correct my stitches, I'm going to be knitting through the back loop of those stitches so that it corrects them, because we want all of our stitches to be nice and even. These stitches are dark, so I know you can't see them. When we get onto the next round, my stitches will be a little bit lighter. It's just the purple part of the rainbow is dark. Okay, so we've got some lighter stitches here, and I'm just going to knit them. Okay, so I have knitted through the back loop of all my stitches, and now it's all even, and I have finished one round of my sock. Let's go on to round 2, which is an increase round. Okay, so what I'm going to be doing for the increase round, we have our top loop and our bottom loop still, and I'm going to pull the needle out from the top here. This is our tail, and it'll just be pulled down, and we'll hide that later. And then I'm going to knit the first stitch, and I always give that stitch a little tug, and then I will knit through the front loop. This is our increase stitch, and I'm going to knit through the back loop. So that increases my stitch by 1, and then I will knit across, until I have 2 stitches left. Okay, I have 2 stitches left. I'm going to do a knit front and back on the second stitch before the last. So knit front, and before I drop that stitch off, I'm going to knit through the back, just like that. So I increased another stitch, and then knit the last stitch. I'm going to push that through and pull out the top needle, and I'm going to work this half the same as I did the other one. Knit the first stitch, I give it a little tug to kind of pull in those ladders if I have any, and then I knit front and back, and then we're going to knit until the last 2 stitches. knit front and back, just like that, and then knit the last stitch. And then that is round 2. And for round 3, 5, 7, all of the odd numbers, you will knit all the way around with no increases, and on the even numbers you will increase 4 stitches like we just did, where you knit the first loop, then do a knit front and back, knit until the last 2 stitches, knit front and back, knit the last stitch. You'll do that on the even rounds until you have the stitch count that you need for your socks. And something else that I want to point out with socks like this, if there is a cuff down sock that you want to knit, but you want to knit it from the toe up, essentially all you have to do is read the pattern backwards. Instead of starting at the beginning and starting the cuff, you'll go to the end of the pattern and start with the toe, and you'll do it that way. So if you want to knit a specific sock and it's a cuff down, just read the pattern backwards and do it that way. Now if it's got like a lace design or some sort of technique in it, you will have to learn how to reverse that for the same effect. But essentially any sock can be knitted toe up, cuff down, vice versa, whatever. It can be done. So that is something to take into consideration, because most sock knitters that I see are cuff down sock knitters. They don't always do toe up, and so that's a lot of knitted patterns is cuff down. So, you know, me, I want to knit toe up. I'm going to look at whatever sock pattern that I want to knit, and I'm going to convert it to toe up. You can do the same thing. It's going to take a little practice, and yes, you may mess up the first time or two, but if you continue to practice and work on it, you can do it. So go ahead and do your increase rounds and your even rounds until you have the stitch count that you need, and then we will get to the next part. Alright, so I have come to the end of my increases. I have 56 stitches, which is 28 stitches on each needle. And after I get my increases done and I have the amount of stitches I need to go on and start the foot, I just take and knit evenly, just around and around until I have the length that I need. And something that I love about doing toe-up socks, especially with magic loop, is you can actually try on the sock as you go to see if it's the length that you like. And so that is what I do. I don't have a set number of rounds that I do. I have just tried it on as I go, and so that's what I recommend doing. And you can take and record the amount of rounds it is that you're happy with for your sock, for your foot, and record it so that every time you make a sock you can do it the same way every time. Me, I don't care or mind if I have an extra round on the cuff, or, you know, I'm not I'm not really worried about that. I just make it to where it feels comfortable for me, and then I go on. And you'll just continue this around and around until you have the length that you need. And then we'll come back whenever it's time for the leg. So I'll go ahead and show you. This is my stitch marker where I placed for where my leg, well, not mine, but my husband's leg of the sock starts. And so this is the length that he wanted, so that it fits right with his Sunday shoes, because he wears these with his suits on Sunday. So that is my stitch marker telling me where I need to start my leg. And the reason why I place a stitch marker there to tell me is because I do a little bit of decreasing within the sock to help it stay more snug on his legs, because he says it tends to fall down and bunch up, and he doesn't like it falling down off his leg. So I do some decreases in here just to kind of tighten it up a little bit so that it feels more comfortable for him. And so I'm going to continue knitting around and around until I have the length that I want for my foot, and then we'll come back and work on the leg together. Alright, I'll see you in a bit. Okay, so I'm back after making my tube sock. Now, I told you I'd come back whenever I got the foot of it done. I didn't count my rows, or rounds, but I'm not stressing over it because I'm not putting a heel in these socks. If I was to put a heel in these socks, then I would count all of my rounds and make everything exact. That way it would fit on the foot the same way on both socks. But because these are tube socks and not ones with heels, then I will not worry about it. But whenever, because I've got a stitch marker right here that marks where the heel, not the heel, but the ankle is. And this is the part of the ankle that I take and measure up everything. And this second sock may have a couple more rounds on it more than this one. I'm not stressing over it. You won't be able to tell whenever it's finished and on his feet, so no worries. But I'm at my stitch marker, and now I'm going to start in on my decreases. Now, I want to point out that everybody's feet, everybody's legs, they're all different. So what I recommend is you make your first pair of tube socks, you wear them, and you take and basically test them. If the feet fit right and the legs, the leg of the sock folds down on you or scrunches down and you don't like that, then you need to adjust the pattern you did. So if that happens, what you do is you decrease on the leg. If the foot doesn't fit and it's too loose or too tight, then you need to go up or down on your stitch count. It all depends on your feet and how you like your socks to fit. He likes his socks to stay up. He doesn't like them to scrunch down. And if I don't decrease, then they tend to scrunch down. So what I'm going to do, because I did a 1x1 ribbing, what I'm going to do is decrease in sets of 2. So for this sock, I will decrease 4 stitches and see how it fits him. And the next pair of socks that I make him, I will take and decrease more or decrease less depending on how they fit and what he wants. So this pair, I will be decreasing 4 stitches, and the way I decrease in my tube socks is just knit 2 together. You can do whatever decrease that suits your fancy. It doesn't matter. I just do a knit 2 together because it's easy and I can get on with the pattern. So that is everything that you need to know for knitting tube socks. I take and I knit in stockinette for the leg as far as I or he wants, and then I do 1x1 ribbing, and this 1x1 ribbing is probably about 1 inch tall. You do you, and you do it the way you like your socks. If you want shorties, if you want tall socks, whatever it is that you want, everything is customizable. Everything can be fixed to fit your foot the way you want it. That's why this video is not a specific pattern on knitting socks, because everybody's feet are different. All I'm doing is giving you a basic formula so that you can take and make alterations to fit the way you want it to fit. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you have any questions about any of this, you can leave them down in the comment section below, and I will be happy to help you in any way I can. If I don't have the answer, then we will research until we find the answer. I want everybody to be able to knit socks if they want to knit socks, because I know me, and I love hand knitted socks. I can't do top down socks. I have to do toe up. And until I figured that out, I hated knitting socks. So if I'm just hoping that this video is one that will help you get started in your journey of sock knitting. I will see y'all another day. Have a wonderful day, wonderful week, wonderful weekend, whatever day you decide to watch this. Just have a good day and do something fun for yourself. I'll talk to you later. Bye.